Hello, and welcome to the Caregivers Stories podcast, where we discuss all types of dementia and hopefully share some caregiver stories along the way. My name is Kimberly Scott, and I'm a part time caregiver to my mother, who at the age of 65 was diagnosed with early onset dementia. And to give caregivers a place to tell their story when they're ready, continue to educate those who don't know about dementia and what to do if their loved one is diagnosed. And most importantly, I want to get people talking and having a tough conversation about the what if your loved one is diagnosed. Then what? Do you have a plan? I wish my mom and I had had that tough conversation before she was diagnosed. So if you want to share your story or have knowledge about dementia and want to be a guest on Caregiver Story podcast, visit thatkimberly.com to sign up to be interviewed. And while you're there, you can pick what platform you prefer to listen to the podcast on, whether it's iTunes, Spotify, Google, YouTube, and now Amazon Alexa. Now I'd like to introduce my guest today, Peggy Bushy.
Hello.
Hi, Peggy. Thank you for joining me today.
Well, thank you for having me, and thank you for raising awareness, especially with Lewy body disease or dementia, which not many people know about. So it's important. It's an important cause to raise awareness.
Absolutely. And not many people understand that dementia is a symptom of all these others, including Lewy bodies, and that it's not just Alzheimer's. That just automatically, I had to learn that, very quickly, that there's more types of dementia. And so I'm really excited that you're willing to share your story about being a caregiver for your mother. So tell the listeners a little bit of background about who you are and what led you to this point in time in your life.
Well, my mother lived with my family and me since, forever, for 35 years before she finally went into long care facility. And around her 50s, she started making up stories, but they were, maybe one crazy story a year. And after about 10 or 20 years, it started to progress, and the stories, the wild stories, because she was hallucinating, became more and more. And her hallucinations became more vivid, and there were men in her bed, and I didn't really know what was going on.
Wow.
So I Googled and Googled and Googled. I checked her medications. I checked all kinds of avenues to try to figure out what was making her hallucinate. And I thought she had elderly schizophrenia, that because she would have conversations with these people, she'd just make up these wild stories, not make them up. They were really in her head.
Yeah.
And finally, my cousin texted me and said, Lewy body dementia, Google it. And I did. And my mother had every single symptom except drooling. She didn't drool.
Okay.
And from there on, I tried to get her treated.
So she lived with you, and then when she started showing these signs of hallucinations, I should say, she didn't want to go to the doctor. I know my dad hates doctors, so that's why I asked. Was she adamant about not going to the doctor?
She did not share what she should have shared with her primary care. So I took her to mine. And the other thing with Lewy body dementia is that, the person can fluctuate in and out of cognition. And she was very strong. She fooled a lot of people. My primary care doctor said, there is nothing wrong with this woman. She's a lovely person. And I said, well, but did she tell you that people are trying to kill her? Because that was a big thing. She thought this woman, who she named Killer because she didn't know her name, because she wasn't real, was trying to kill her. And then that piqued his interest, but she wouldn't go back. She was very stubborn, and she had fears around having dementia / dying. She just wanted to be young forever.
Yeah,
So,
I get that. I get that. My mom, she doesn't anymore, but likes to buy products online to, healthcare, skincare. So, there's just that part of that person sometimes that just is not comfortable becoming older.
Right.
I feel it. I'm right there. I might be one of those people in the future. So I get it. So when did you finally get her diagnosed? I know you said that, was it your sister or a friend that sent you something?
My cousin.
Your cousin.
Yes.
So after that, when did you get her finally diagnosed?
After I researched and looked all this up, I made an appointment. My mother used to winter in Florida, and I live up on in Massachusetts. And I would visit her for however many weeks, depending on where my children were in their lives. And at this point, they're all out of the house. So I would visit her and stay with her for a month at a time. And I would make doctor's appointments while I was there. And I tried to tell her primary care doctor that what I suspected. But, wherever I went, neurologists, they all poo-pooed me. They just said, no, I felt like I was the crazy one. I know that's not a politically correct word.
Well, no, because you were saying all this stuff. You're like, I know, I see it, I hear it. She tells me these things. I get it. Yes.
Right. So it took me a long time. Finally, I went to a support group, and there was one woman who said, I know what that disease is, and I am going to help you. It's a cruel disease, and I'm going to help you through it. And I thought, finally, somebody that at least even understood. I was amazed at the amount of people in the medical community that never heard of this dementia, Lewy bodies. I mean, I asked people who worked in nursing homes, doctors, nurses, neurologists, hospital people. No one knew anything about it.
Wow.
So once I got her diagnosed, and finally I made an appointment, the woman at the support group said, wait, get an appointment with this particular neurologist because he knows about the disease. Don't waste your time with people that will fight you on it. Yeah. And I did it. So it took me about 6 months after that to get her diagnosed.
And did they put her on medication? Was she okay with that?
She wasn't okay with that. She was furious. She said right in front of the neurologist, this doctor is a quack, and I will not stop searching. I'm going to get a reporter. I know these stories are true. I know what I'm visualizing is true, and I am not going to stop until I find somebody that can defend my truth. And I couldn't force her to take the drugs. It was Seroquel that would have helped knock down the hallucinations, but I couldn't force her to because she wasn't harming herself. So until that day came, there wasn't anything I could do.
Oh, so you couldn't get any kind of power of she wasn't willing to give you any kind of even medical power of attorney to help. So it was like her against you, basically.
Yes. Medically speaking, it was her against me. I mean, we were best buds, but she just wouldn't listen when it came to her health. She said the disease is a farce. And again, I think it was part of her not willing to recognize that people get old. She kept saying she was desperately afraid that this would happen to her. She did not want to turn into a 2-year-old. So she had a lot of fears. And I think if she went along with a regimen of prescriptions, that would have just sort of validated the fact that she had the disease, and she just wouldn't go there.
Yeah, it wasn't in the cards. It was something that was not happening. Yeah. And the fact that you're best buds, I get the dynamic, the mother-daughter dynamic. My mom is my best friend, but she also doesn't want me telling her when to take her medications.
Right.
Or what to do or anything like that. So I always have to, her caregiver is the person that tells her those things, and the doctor said you can't drive anymore. I leave it up to others that she is more comfortable with telling her about her, because she's very aware that she has what she has. She just is not always good with me suggesting things that she should or shouldn't be doing, like driving. So,
and so you must know that it's such a hard line to walk, that this is your mother. You can't be telling your mother what to do. You love her, she raised you. It's very difficult. It's very difficult.
And it is something that, I learned after she was diagnosed something called redirect. And then I also utilized the fact that because she helped my grandfather and my grandmother, he got sick and eventually towards his latter years got dementia, memory loss. And I would remind her, remember what grandpa, you said you would never do this?
Right.
Yeah, I would always use that story, and she would remember, and then she calms down, and I just approach it differently now. But it is tough until you know how to talk to somebody or your loved one with just dementia, Lewy bodies, or any other of these, cognitive diseases. It's hard. It's hard.
Yes.
So what happened after, she got diagnosed, wouldn't take medications?
Well, it was about 2 years that I stayed in the house. I mean, at first I could take her out to lunch, and then that stopped because I didn't know if I could get her back into the car, because then she started sundowning. And then it was about 2 years that I pretty much didn't leave my house, basically. And I did have help on Wednesdays where I had the whole day. where I could do whatever I needed to do. And I saw my therapist a lot.
Yes. Good for you. Good for
Saved
you.
my life. Yes.
Yes.
And then my children started to say, Mom, this is ridiculous. I couldn't go to any of my grandchildren's birthday parties. I basically could not leave the house with her.
Yeah.
But I couldn't put her in a long-term care facility. I just could not bring myself to do that to my mother. And so I finally made a promise to them, and I said, I'll tell you what, if she goes into the hospital and goes into rehab again, then I'll make that long-term care. And that's what I did. Still heartbroken about it, but that's what we did.
Well, you did the best you could do, and I applaud you. You're an amazing daughter. So
Thank you.
I have to say that. I always remind people that they are doing the best they can, especially when it's just thrown at you. So good for you. And no one can tell you how to feel, but I just, want you to know that you shouldn't feel that way. You did a great job. So
thank you. Yeah, I hear that a lot, but somehow you still have that little nagging thing that says you could have done more,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's always there.
We always work. It's a nature of being a human being.
Yes.
We like to beat ourselves up for some awful reasons. So you brought up a good thing about, going to seek help or, and your therapist. Would you give that advice to other caregivers? What advice would you give to someone who is a caregiver for a loved one?
Well, absolutely. Self-care is huge. And I don't have any sisters. So I envied people that had sisters that all kind of jumped in there and helped with their parents. And
yeah.
So I created my own group of sisters because I realized that people don't wake up in the morning and say, how can I help Peggy Bushy? They have all kinds of things that they're thinking of, but not how they can help me on a particular day.
Yeah.
But yet, if I asked them for their help, they would say, absolutely, what time and where and what can I do? So I sort of created a group of helpers, and this one did this and this one did that. And as well as the tasks that I had to do that I was terrible at, that was traumatic for both my mother and me because I didn't like doing it and she didn't like me doing it. It was nasty. So I got help for. I paid somebody to help me with.
Yeah.
There wasn't a lot of money, but you can figure out how to allocate a certain amount to get done what you need to get done and keep it as, I don't know, light and easy as possible.
Oh, yeah. Definitely. It is one of the hardest things to find, just a caregiver in general to help you when you do need that assistant, your friends, but asking your friends, I found too, that if you just ask, they will help because it is something that people don't always know how to help you. So if you, start with something like, hey, could you, I don't know, like grocery store shopping, something like that,
Right. Well, they don't even know that you need help. I mean, I wrote the book and dear friends of mine said, I had no idea you were going through all that, so they just don't know unless you invite them in.
Yeah. So that's a great segue. So how long after your mom's passing did you write your book, Lewy, Mom and Me, which is a great name for the book?
The book was spiritually driven. It wrote itself, honestly. When my mother went into long-term care, I was looking, or even before then, when she was still with me, I was looking for a book, a support book. I didn't want a medical book. I wanted a memoir, and I could not find anything out there. So I did a lot of journaling. Obviously, when you do a lot of therapy, you do a lot of journaling. And I just put my journals together and wrote a book. And it's just about the journey that I had, just so that other people could see that they weren't alone. I'm on a Facebook site. It's a Lewy Body group, and there are a lot of people on this site, and I am amazed at how many of these people think that they're alone.
Yeah.
They're not, but there aren't a lot of resources, so they feel like they're alone.
Yeah. No, I'm on a Facebook group as well, and it definitely is something that there's a caregiver's crisis 100%. We're living longer and there's more and more people that need care, and there's more and more caregivers every day that feel like, what do they do and where do I start, and am I the only one out there?
Right.
Is what I definitely noticed. So what's one thing that you would want people to know about Lewy body's dementia? Or maybe a couple. It doesn't have to be one.
I think the biggest thing is to get a proper diagnosis, which is difficult to do. Well, because there's not a lot of knowledge about it still in the medical community, so there's a lot of pushback on making that diagnosis. But if you get the proper diagnosis, then you know how to treat it medically, and you know how to treat the person that you love instead of fighting with them. And I know that that happens with all kinds of dementias, but Lewy body, as I said, they fluctuate in and out of cognition. So it's a little bit different because you think this person is their typical selves, and then 1 minute they're not, and you don't understand what that is. I actually had an Amazon review that said, I'm paraphrasing, but basically this woman is a nut. Either you have dementia or you don't. She doesn't know anything about what she's talking about. And I thought, thank you. That's the best review you could give me, because that's what's so frustrating about Lewy body dementia. 1 minute they're selves, and the next minute they're off the wall. You think, what happened? So, hang in there and get that fight to get the proper diagnosis, and then you know what you're dealing with, I would say. And then get a power of attorney if you don't have one as soon as possible, and a healthcare proxy as soon as possible, so that you can go in there with your loved one and hear what they're telling the doctor and what the doctor is telling them.
Yep, that was the first thing I did.
Yes,
was to get power of attorney when she got diagnosed. And thank goodness 7 years ago, because doing it now, she would not.
Exactly.
It's easy, but that was one of the very first things when the doctor said she was very okay with me getting that, and so I could understand things, and then also with her finances, because she was a little upside down because she just forgot to pay her bills.
Right.
So even though she had the money to pay her bills, they weren't getting paid. So
my mother had hallucinations that stole her bills and hid them on her.
Yeah.
I know.
Well, I looked up your reviews, and all of them were amazing. So, it's kind of funny that you said that about the person and saying that. But the first 10 that I read were, this book is amazing. Everyone should read it.
Thank you.
I definitely give you that. I want to say that out loud. So what is something that surprised you about being a caregiver?
The biggest surprise for me was, I always thought I'm not a Florence Nightingale. I mean, I raised children and did all that you have to do to, the boo-boos and all the icky stuff, but I didn't like the nursing kind of thing. Whenever they needed help, I sent them to their father if they were bleeding or whatever. Yeah. But with my mother, the first time I said, I draw the line at toileting or showering. But when it happens, it just happens, and you do it. And then you find out that you can do it, and you find ways to do it better. Or, as I said, if showering was not my best thing, and it was because it took her 45 minutes to get from taking your clothes off to the shower, because she would check the drawers and check her toiletries and check this and check that. I just didn't have the patience for it. I had a lot of other things to do. So I hired somebody to shower her, and they turned it into a big party, and voila, it was the best thing I could think of. But yeah, so you just don't think that you can care for your parent in that way. And it's surprisingly, I did. You just do it. And my grandmother used to say, a clear conscience is a soft pillow. And doing that, caregiving is a soft pillow. You do the best you can, you care for somebody, and you can take that pillow with you for the rest of your life. It's a soft pillow, I guess.
Yeah.
That's all.
It is. I tell people that, God gives you children, because one of those children, I have siblings, and one, maybe all, but one starts out the one that's going to be taking care of you and get the others involved or figure out the plan. So it is. And then, others say it's our, working our way into heaven, or, whatever the religious belief is.
Right.
But it is something that I feel my mom gave me life and provided for me, for 18 years and set me on my way. And it's the least I can do in her last years of life, is to make sure she's cared for. And that's exactly what you did.
Right.
For a lot longer, than the 7 years I've been going through it. So again, I applaud you, because it is something that is a labor of love, for sure.
Thank you.
So where can folks one, buy your book, and two, maybe connect with you if they have any more questions.
I have a website, peggybushy.com.
Okay.
And my book's on Amazon, and it's also on my website, and it's in a few local stores, but if you're on Cape Cod.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm happy to answer questions. I know it is a small world when you're taking care of somebody with under the Lewy body umbrella. So if they ask me a question on my website, through my website, I'm happy as much as I can to answer questions and help.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's all you can do is share the knowledge, pass it on, and, just know that you did the best you could do. And we're humans, we're
Right.
we're figuring out as we go, because
Exactly.
it's the smallest sector, and there's no cure for any of these forms of dementia. I don't think that there'll be one in in my lifetime. And I'm 45, so I know there won't be one in my mom's either. So all we can do is just share with one another.
Exactly, because I know I made a lot of mistakes. So it's nice to be able to hear, okay, well, don't do that, or watch out for that. I know everybody's different, but if we can support each other, then we can help avoid maybe making some mistakes and hardships along the way.
Yes, and regretting anything that we were just doing out of love, or out of, I don't want to say the word ignorance, but it is,
Right.
you don't know what you don't know. So
Exactly.
it is, you're doing the best that you can.
Right.
Well, thank you again, Peggy. I do appreciate you joining me today and sharing your story. I appreciate your time. I'm very grateful for people like you that are willing to share their knowledge with myself and the listeners.
And I'm grateful for people like you who have their eyes open to the Lewy body umbrella and helping getting it out there. It's important.
Thank you. Thank you to the listeners for tuning in. And if you know somebody that could use this message, this episode, please share it with them. If they have any questions, again, they can reach out to Peggy. They can always message me as well on Facebook, LinkedIn, DM, Instagram, Twitter, all those great places. And until next week, remember, sharing is caring. And to the caregivers listening, in the words of Dottie Gandy, you have my undying love, gratitude, and admiration. And to all those that have not had a conversation with your family members about dementia, any form of all these dementias that are out there, please start talking about the what if something happens and they can no longer care for themselves. What's the plan? Because take it from a daughter with a mother who has dementia, that I wish I had had that tough conversation with her at least 10 years ago. So thank you again. Thanks, Peggy.
Thank you.